Hello Outriders, it is Ebontis, and on this video I want to cover one specific mod and how important it is to basically anybody with an anomaly powered build, which there's a lot of them out there. Currently I've got a Technomancer. I've seen obviously Devastator builds, Pyromancers probably live by it. Most classes have a build like this. We know blighted rounds and twisted rounds and all those rounds type builds kind of got a bit of a hit. Some can still be powerful, some are still viable to a certain point, but when you start really pushing to the high levels, there's a whole different discussion to be had with regards to the timers and the expeditions and that type of thing. But this one mod actually really helps a lot depending on what your build is like, but it's usually going to be helpful especially based on your anomaly power, and that mod is Untamed Power. Now the way it works is it says using skills deals 45,000 damage to enemies within a 5-meter radius around you. The damage is equal to 30% of your anomaly power. Now, keep in mind, your anomaly power does scale when it comes to gear and your highest equipable gear level. So this is more of an in-game thing. But that being said, you use skills a lot depending on what build you lean into. And if you aren't actually equipping this build and you're using skills very frequently, depending on how up close and personal you are to some of these attacks, especially things like a Trickster or a Devastator, you're probably missing out on a decent amount of damage. Now, my build on my Technomancer is not actually probably what they intended it to be. It's a very up close and personal, and that's probably a video for maybe tomorrow. But here, we've got Untamed Power basically doing damage within a 5-meter radius anytime I cast a skill. Well, what counts as a skill? It's going to be anything I cast here. My Shrapnel, that I'm going to have a cooldown of about 11 seconds. My Fixing Wave, my cooldown's 14 seconds. And my Blighted Turret is 5.4 seconds. Now granted, my gear is very heavily spec'd into cooldown reduction. Cooldown reduction, cooldown reduction. Cooldown reduction's actually on that one and that one. So I have a heavy swing into that. But there's another thing that actually counts as a skill. And this is one I learned just recently. And that's your melee. That counts as a skill. Now, how do I know this? Is because I can show you if I go into any, basically pick one. We'll go into Time Worn Spire. It does not matter. Go at level 50, so everything's hitting basically at the exact same. Now, my melees also do toxic damage. That's the way my skill tree is set up. That being said, anytime I do melee, I'm going to do a couple things. The actual damage of my melee, which is based around my anomaly power. I've got the toxic tick damage, which is only there for my class specifically. And then I've got the actual damage of Untamed Power. And guess which one's going to win? I will do one punch, and then I will die. And I'll show you guys what I'm talking about. So come over here. That's my one punch. I'm going to take a lot of shots. I'm actually getting some health back because you guys can see his health is ticking. That's just from the toxic damage. It doesn't take too long for you to die when you're actually not getting healed in this game. It's going to happen right about there. So go ahead and let me die. No big deal. Go ahead and abandon it once the slow-mo death goes. Man, that's a dramatic death, dude. Just fall. Abandon. And we'll go look at the damage when we're done. So the nice thing about this is you're going to get surrounded by enemies. It just happens a lot. But the one thing to make note of is how much damage each piece of it does. And your build is going to be a little different depending on your class and what you're doing. But depending on how frequently you cast skills, which is if you're based around anomaly power, you're probably going to have a fairly low cooldown reduction. And the other piece that matters about this is how frequently you are surrounded by enemies. If you're a certain class that wants to be farther away, then you're probably not going to be up close and personal. My build is weird. I got to shout out to one person I found it from. A buddy of mine sent it to me, and it's somebody who has like 8 subscribers on YouTube. So when I get to that, I'll show you guys what that's all about. But you can see 3 things here. Cold Push Melee did about 30,000 damage. Now, it was my Jumping Slam. That's what it did. Toxic. I'm a Technomancer, high Anomaly Power. This is also based around status power, and my status power is not even that high. But that's 40,000. And then, Untamed Power. Literally, by punching one time, I do more with the Untamed Power, like close-range burst, than I do with Cold Push, or with my Toxic Tick. And the nice thing is you can do your melee a lot, depending on your class, depending on how much you're surrounded. Pretty much every class can use this mod, and I've seen multiple builds get use out of this, because a lot of the time you are going to be up close and personal. Whether you're trying to do damage and you're getting damage back by, you know, leeching from enemies as a Technomancer, or when you're killing enemies up close. Same principle applies to multiple classes. For a Pyromancer, you are going to be casting your abilities a lot, so you may get a little less use out of this. There's probably different builds for you. Main reason I say that is because you're looking to like mark and burn, and your proximity doesn't come that much into it, which you probably want to be farthest away. Due to Technomancers actually being able to leech consistently, being up close and in the fight with my ridiculously weird build, I'm actually up in there as much as any of the other two classes that want to be close, which is not what you would expect for a Technomancer, but it technically works. But Untamed Power, you'll watch this little burst around me. So when I throw one of my mines out, see that little burst? Every time I throw a skill, that burst goes off. Anytime I heal myself with Fixing Wave, the burst goes as well. Anytime I throw a turret. And that turret has about a 5.5 second cooldown. They're almost up. Every time I cast a skill, every one of those little bursts can do that much damage. So that is why, if you are up close and personal, you're casting your skills frequently, you've got low cooldowns, this is something you do not want to sleep on. So what I'm going to do is go through basically a full run, and then at the end we're going to talk about my damage. And I don't want to go fully into the build, but I just want to let you guys see where it ranks in my damage, and again why this is so important. If you are a class that is up close and personal, and you are using your skills frequently due to low cooldowns, which is definitely a build you could have, anything but related around high anomaly power, yeah, this is kind of my anomaly power gets kind of crazy high when my build starts going off, but that's just kind of how that works. But yeah, I've got a pretty substantial anomaly power build. So I'm going to jump in, show you guys the ending screen of the damage so you can see it's literally usually my number 2. Shrapnel for my Technomancer is kind of what my build is all around, but number 2 is this mod. So let me show you guys, I'll be back. Alright, so I will do a separate video on my build, but this is just an example. I died partway through, but this still proves the point. So my build uses the shrapnel, however you want to say it, scrapnel, but it really should be shrapnel mod very frequently. That's the whole point. High anomaly damage. But notice number 2. 14.2 million shrapnel damage. 8 million untamed power. Every melee I do, every running slam melee I do, every time I cast shrapnel, every time I throw out a blighted turret, every time I heal myself. That is my number 2 thing that's happening. Now, clip combustion is a pretty solid one. There's a couple other things to go into about the build. But the main reason is I wanted you to see all the options. I wanted you to see that Untamed Power is a very, very crucial build. This piece, it can be a very important piece. Now, if you go full, like, set bonuses and things like that, there are some crazy things that happen in these builds. Obviously, I get that. But this is one of those things that I didn't quite know about as much, and one that if you are playing a class that uses, you know, abilities very frequently, and you're up close and personal, I don't know how a Pyromancer would probably get as much out of use without this one, but I would imagine the other classes would. And this is why I need to play the other classes. But even for mine, if you're within 5 meters of enemies, frequently, about half of the classes probably are, if not more, and you're using an ability and you use it frequently, when you cast that ability, bam, 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 it doesn't matter how many times you're casting or whatever, every single time you use it, you get a chunk of damage. So that's why I wanted to show you guys that, just because it's important to see how much damage it does in relation to everything else in my build. It's a crucial piece. Now, a buddy of mine has a separate variation on this build, and it may not be quite as high, but it's still up there. So if this is a mod that you're sleeping on, it's only tier 2. Keep your eyes out for it. Look for it and apply it to your gear. So if you're up close and personal with enemies when you're casting those abilities, the higher level you get on armor, the higher this thing is going to do damage. And again, it's based on your anomaly power. So the higher your anomaly power, the more it goes. So look for gear with anomaly power that's got it. Obviously, you guys can see that I'm at a higher level, but remember, this stuff scales. You can only get so high at lower levels, but it still should do a good chunk of damage depending on what you're doing. So hopefully this one helps you guys out. This is just one mod that surprisingly still continues to stay near the top 2 or 3 portions of my damage. So I wanted to shout it out to all you guys. So Untamed Power, tier 2 on weapons, one of the mods you want to look out for, and probably want to use it on most of the classes. If you enjoyed this video, drop a like below, leave a comment if you've got, you know, another mod that you want me to look at, if you got other classes you want me to go over. I'm working through a Devastator next, so it will take some time to obviously get it up to anything like this level, but I am working through a Devastator next to get a very different feel than what my Technomancer is like. So that one will be coming next, but if you guys do want to see this specific build and me explain how this whole thing works, let me know down below. If you did enjoy the video, as I said, drop a like, leave a comment if you got any questions or anything like that. If you're new to the channel, drop a subscribe and hit that alert bell. Those are always appreciated. A nice way to help support that channel. You guys can find me on Twitter. You can find me on Twitch, twitch.tv/Ebontis, streaming this, Destiny, or pretty much a whole bunch of stuff. So thank you guys very much. I will see you soon. Have a good one.